Thank you for joining us live on KEXP. I'm Cheryl Waters, and so happy to be here in the studio with one of my favorite musicians, in fact, one of my favorite people joining us live on KEXP today. It's Adia Victoria. Welcome.
Hello, Cheryl.
It's always such a pleasure to see you, and I've got you all to myself today. I know you've been on tour, super busy with the band, playing lots of shows. So excited to have you here in the Pacific Northwest.
It's good to be back here with you.
We chatted during the pandemic, which it's hard to talk about it now. We're sort of still in that phase, but when we were all locked up at home, we had a fun live on KEXP at home session, and I'm still listening to a Southern Gothic pretty regularly. I'm so excited you're going to start us off with a song from that one.
I am. I'm going to play the first single from a Southern Gothic, Magnolia Blues.
It's Adia Victoria live on KEXP.
Follow you into the blue and north into the cold. You led me off my land, honey, led me far from home. Well, I tried to be the kind of girl who never needed shit. I gave you all my light and I got night to show for it. I'm going back south to Carolina, gonna plant myself under a magnolia. I'm gonna let that dirt do its work. I plant myself under a magnolia, a magnolia, magnolia, a magnolia, magnolia. I made every mile move beneath my feet alone. I didn't have the dime to ride the blinds to lead me back to home. Well, I asked the conductor, son, now won't you let me ride? He said, baby girl, this ain't my world. That train ain't none of mine. I'm going back south to Carolina. I'm gonna plant myself under a magnolia. I'm gonna let that dirt do its work. I plant myself under a magnolia, a magnolia, a magnolia, a magnolia, a magnolia. Now, ooh, something in the air tonight, something in the air tonight. Something in the air tonight, something in the air tonight. Ooh, something in the air tonight, something in the air tonight. I'm going back south, down to Carolina. Gonna plant myself under a magnolia. Gonna let that dirt do its work. I plant myself under a magnolia, a magnolia, magnolia, a magnolia, magnolia.
Adia Victoria live on KEXP. What do you feel like playing next?
I'm going to keep it on that Southern Gothic tip, and I'm going to play a song called Mean-Hearted Woman.
I love this one.
My baby woke me on Christmas Day. He said it's time for me to go my way. I asked him why he wanna say that for. He just packed my bag and put me out the door. And now the snow is falling through the pine. You used to tell me that your home was mine. At first I was sad, and then I was blue, and now I'm so mad I don't know what I might do. You made me a mean-hearted woman. You made me a mean-hearted woman. It wasn't long until I heard it said, you got another woman in your bed. And now I'm hearing voices in my head, a flash of light, and I am seeing red. And now you've gone and broke my heart in two. You've got me in a black screaming mood. I got it and made a burst into flame. Let the whole world burn and let the ashes rain. You made me a mean-hearted woman. You made me a mean-hearted woman. And after all the pain you've put me through, you better hope that I don't catch up with you. And if you see my shadows through the pine, babe, it's too late. It's killing time. You made me a mean-hearted woman. You made me a mean-hearted woman. You made me a mean-hearted woman. You made me a mean-hearted woman.
You're listening to Adia Victoria live here in the KEXP studios. Played a couple of songs from the album A Southern Gothic, which came out in September last year.
Yes, it did. Okay. I'm going to switch guitars real quick on y'all.
All righty. I know that you are a tiny bit frazzled now, although you could never tell by listening to your amazing performance. But I know that some of your equipment got mangled on a flight, and it just makes you think about all the things that have to fall into place to be on tour, and you're worried about all these health restrictions now, and then the instrument that you use to ply your craft is almost like an appendage. It must cause so much stress to think of all the things that it takes to pull a tour together.
You know, it does. I think the good Lord just looked down on me today, and he was like, you know what? We're going to see if she still has a sense of humor. But the way that I look at it is like all of the troubles and the absurdities that I deal with on the road, I would prefer having these problems over any other problem.
Amen to that. Well, and also, you could sing a cappella, and we'd be equally as happy.
That is true.
Voice.
I've had to do that a few times in my life. I know I said I was going to do 4 songs, but just due to the state of this guitar, you mind if we just do this last one?
Absolutely.
So do you mind if I just say a little bit about this?
Please.
So this is a song. It's called Heathen. I wrote this song. It's one of the first songs I wrote in Nashville back in 2012. And I wrote it thinking about my own sexual life, my history. And I thought about the different ways that men and women are judged when it comes time to, as I like to say, get your freak on. And I thought about how there's one set of roles for men and then one for women. and how women are expected to hold all the blame and the shame. And this song, Heathen, was me, just saying, I don't want to play this game. And it's also a song about a woman's right to autonomy over her body. And I think that's a very timely thing. It's always a timely thing. And the song is just, it's a protest. It's a cry from my heart. It's a big FU to all these weird dudes that are trying to do damage to our bodies in the name of control, because they can't control their own selves. So in solidarity, this song is called Heathen. Make sure she's still ready. All right, that'll do.
I never bother to ask. I never bother with please. I never bother with excuse me, miss, begging pardon, darling, that ain't for me. I like to do things my way, but I don't do them at all. First they ask you to compromise, in the next breath demanding you crawl. Y'all, I guess that makes me a heathen, quite possibly. Oh darling, I am a heathen, oh evil-hearted me. He says I'm covered in shame, he says I'm covered in sin. But he didn't mind my ways last night, and it sure ain't mind my skin. But darling, I never talk, you know that I never tell. I'll be your tight-lipped confidant, your silent Jezebel. Hell, I guess it makes me the heathen, or something lower than dirt. I hear you calling me heathen, woo, like you think it hurts. Now Jesus came to me one day and he washed my sins away. But then I caught sight of those city lights and I was led astray. 'Cause darling, I am a heathen, oh yeah, bitter to the bone. But if I am the heathen, then why won't you leave me alone? Leave me alone. Go and leave me alone, baby. You better leave me alone, baby. You go and leave me alone, baby. You better leave me alone. Leave us alone. Leave us alone. Leave us alone.
Thank you for that. It's Adia Victoria live on KEXP. Heathen comes from the 2019 album, Silences. And you talked about, before you played that song, just wanting to do it your way. I feel like that's a theme in your life.
Yes.
It's how you feel about fame and creativity and making your art. I know that been lucky enough to follow you for most of your recording career anyway. And do you feel like you've grown a lot in that area and gained more confidence and been able to speak up for yourself? When I read you talk about it in interviews, it feels like something that comes deep from within inside you that you've maybe had there all along.
Yes. I do. I feel like I've grown as an artist and as a human leaps and bounds. And I think the thing that, the greatest cause of that growth is I had to ask myself who's going to be the author of my story. And as long as I saw myself as a victim to other people and circumstances, I realized I was giving them a great deal of power to write my story. And I said, Adia, you don't even let people write your songs. How are you going to let people write your own narrative for you? So the more I shooed them aside and I took over the pen that was writing my life story, the more I knew I could trust myself to speak for myself and to live for myself.
I know that you're very connected to where you came from, and just in Magnolia Blues, you talked about going back to Carolina, and you have the song Carolina Bound on the new album. I mean, that theme threads throughout all of your songs and all of your music. You do live in Nashville now, but I'm wondering what the draw towards home is. And also, I wanted to ask about going to Paris to start writing this record when you're so drawn and centered in the South.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the South is my muse. You know, I think the thing about Southerners is that we're always chewing on our history. There's no point of resolution for us. And, you know, you can leave home, but home is still with you. It's still, you carried it in your bones. And, you know, where I come from, my upbringing, it was hard. I struggled a lot. My first inclination was to run away to New York City, run away to Paris. But I realized I still belong to South Carolina. And I feel like on this record, dealing with the pandemic, being forced to stay in one location in Nashville, not being able to go home, it changed my perspective on it. My whole relationship with South Carolina, it changed, and I was able to see it with more nuance. I was able to let go of a lot of the pain that I incurred growing up. And as far as Paris is concerned, that's just been a place I've gone back to alone since I was 18. And Paris is just a place for me where I can be alone with my thoughts, where I can ponder things, and I can have this distance between me and South Carolina where I can look at the Deep South with a little bit more perspective. And the people watching is just great. I just love watching the people in Paris and just sitting down, smoking a cigarette, and just staring at people and wondering what's going on, you know, in their lives. What stories are these people carrying?
I love that. Yeah, Paris is a magical place. It's nice to have a connection there, and we're just lucky if we get the chance to travel and go places that draw us back over and over again. I know the songs on Southern Gothic, you've explored stories that weren't necessarily your own on this record. Can you talk a little bit about what the catalyst was to kind of write outside yourself this time?
Sure. Yeah, I feel like I'm telling stories on this record, the stories of a lot of young girls I grew up with, young women in South Carolina, who are carrying just a whole lifetimes within them. And there's so much that's suppressed and repressed by polite society in the South. And I wanted to examine the inner lives of Southern womanhood and girlhood. You know, look at what happens when you grow up in, you know, the Southern church and you're just forced to exile whole parts of yourself. And then the idea of who is the reliable narrator. Is it the way that you perceive yourself, or is it the way that others perceive you? And maintaining appearances is very important where I come from. And I wanted to kind of scratch the surface of how do we view other people? Why do we view other people the way that we do? Why do we view ourselves the way that we do? You know, what's influencing us? And there's a great Michael Scott quote from The Office where he asked someone, why are you the way you are? So that's kind of the question I've been asking myself and a lot of my female relatives and friends that I grew up with. Like, why are we like this? Who put us so?
I love hearing those stories in the songs. There's also a real rhythm to everyday life in your music, and you've talked about that there was a rhythm when you were walking around Paris, there was a rhythm when you were working at an Amazon distribution center, and I'm wondering, how do you pull inspiration from those surroundings and put them into your music? I know I read some articles where you started making the music and you didn't have a lot of people and a lot of resources available to you in Paris. You were actually using really interesting, unique, unexpected things to create those rhythms.
Right. You know, I was listening to a lot of the Alan Lomax recordings before the pandemic hit while I was in Paris writing. And I'm fortunate enough to have a few creative partners over there, one of which was Marcello Giuliani. And I knew that with the Southern Gothic, I wanted the rhythm to be the backbone of the songs. I wanted to have this driving life to it. And I thought about those Alan Lomax recordings and the way that, you know, he was recording the field songs that the chain gang workers would work on, and how these men had nothing but their bodies and crude tools and the soil and the rocks that they were breaking. And they created these songs that have lived on, you know, past them. And I think that there's something about the vitality of those recordings, just the very primal stripped down process of making art. It's you, and it's a heartbeat. And so I took that as a lesson of if I can create a song that I can sing, and I write it while I'm walking or shaking a can of beans with Marcello, like I know that's a good song. And I think it maybe goes back to my training as a dancer, where you are singing with your whole body. And so I wanted the songs to have that kind of connection to the earth, connection to my heart.
You talk about some of the collaborators you enjoy working with, and you, of course, worked with the legendary T-Bone Burnett on A Southern Gothic, and on Silences, you worked with Aaron Dessner. What does working with a producer typically look like for you in the studio?
I mean, working with someone like Aaron, he believed in me. He didn't want to absorb me completely into his world, He was like, I've got this studio. I'd love to help you bring your stories alive. And it's the same thing with T-Bone, He told me, you don't need anybody else's hand over your hand to write your stories. So they knew that, I'm approaching music making and writing the blues as a writer first. And they see their job kind of as, helping to create a soundtrack for these characters, for these stories, a sonic backdrop. And I think that requires a lot of trust in your artists that you're working with, and belief in them as well. And also for men too, like these are very powerful white men. I'm sure that they're used to getting their way and people kind of, following their lead. But, I make it plain with anybody I work with that you're here to help me, help me, help you, help me.
I love that. Well, KEXP is celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, and we began broadcasting in 1972, and our goal the whole time has just been to help listeners discover new music. And I'm wondering, as an independent artist, what has it meant over the years to have a station like KEXP supporting your music?
I feel like my music reached Seattle before I ever set foot here, and to know that my music is in the hands of a station like this, to share it with people, it makes me feel like my world is bigger. It makes me feel like I'm not alone. And I know what independent radio meant for me growing up in South Carolina, and I think about the reach that y'all have. And it's a labor of love what y'all are doing at KEXP. And I'm honored and humbled to have a musical home here in Seattle, thanks to y'all.
Well, you always have a musical home here at KEXP and in Seattle, and we're honored always to have you stop by. Thank you for taking the time today, and always such a pleasure to see you.
Likewise, Cheryl.
You're listening to Live on KEXP, supported by listeners. We want to thank you all so much for donating, making sessions like this possible. You can learn more about us at kexp.org and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can discover so much great live music, past sessions with Adia, Victoria, and this one will be up soon. Thank you so much for joining us today, live on KEXP. Discover new music at listener-powered KEXP.org.